as a warning at the USS Canberra is LCS 30 in the Persian Gulf. It was this morning.
Hmm.
What is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, Larry?
Hey, Iran's got it shut down, and the United States is trying to figure out if he can get it open, which he can't. But that's that's what it's saying. I'm looking up a picture of the USS Canberra. Um, hmm. Yeah. So it's listed as a heavy cruiser, or a guided missile cruiser.
Is
So
some kind of destroyer or
yeah, it's a little smaller than a destroyer. Uh, but it is so this guided missile. Normally, these are attached to a carrier strike group. Um, Now, we gotta look at the deck configuration that has these vertical launch systems. So it's like tubes that are in the deck of the ship. Those have to be preloaded before that ship sailed out of came out of Norfolk or wherever. They loaded the missiles in, and they had at that point to make a choice. Do we load offensive missiles or defensive missiles? Do we load missiles like a Tomahawk, or do we load something like a PAC-3? It uses a different kind, but a missile for air defense. So it's not like they got to see and yesterday decided, hey, we're going to load you up to go with offensive missiles. No, this has to be done in advance. So that's what I mean. When you consider if they're putting these kinds of ships into the Strait of Hormuz, equipped with rockets or missiles that are offensive in nature, this is planned in advance. This is not a last minute thing. This wasn't they just decided to do this. They've been planning to do this. And I think that's an important distinction.
yeah. The other incident today was the attack. It's some sort of attack on a South Korean ship. I don't know where it was. It seems that it was at some of these ports in the UAE, and they wanted to do something there, or to and
Are you referring to the oil tanker? And was it called Anco or something like that?
yeah, they call it. It's from a company, South Korean company, HMM. It's called HMM, and the company itself, they put out a note. They're saying a fire broke out on a cargo ship belonging to a Korean ship company. They're saying that, and it's not yet clear whether the fire was caused by an attack or an internal fire. But the other reports show it was some sort of attack by drones or maybe missiles.
Hmm.
And here is the reality. Here is what IRGC put out today, and they're talking about the blockade, this zone that the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is happening. The regime, the new mechanism defined by Iranians.
Hmm.
It goes all the other. You look at the right side, the line, that yellow line on the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
side. It goes to the Fujairah, one of the important ports of the UAE to export oil.
Hmm.
Not only Fujairah, it's Horfakan as well. Two important points when it comes to the exports of the UAE. It seems that Iran is controlling the whole area, and that South Korean ship was in this area, close to the UAE, and that's why they got hit, because they were somehow, crossing the red lines defined by the new mechanism in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, this is um, Iran is definitely challenging the United States back, and the United States, they don't have a plan, or whatever plan they have. I would question that it can. There is no successful plan. Let me put it that way. The Because to fully open, what do we mean when we say open the Strait of Hormuz? That a ship can transit that strait without fear of getting blown up or hit by a missile. Okay? So you have to eliminate the ability of Iran to put any mines out there, to have any underwater drones, to have any mini submarines with torpedoes, to have any maritime drones that are on top of the water, to have any fast boats with a crew which can launch missiles against a ship, to have aerial drones, to have coastal defense cruise missiles, and to have ballistic missiles, both short range, intermediate range ballistic missiles. Boy, that's that's what you call a multi-layered system for defending that strait. And to take that out, to ensure that they couldn't fire a missile at you, would mean that you'd have to penetrate 150 miles into Iran at least, to caves and underground cities where they could launch those missiles from. So there is no simple way to do this. And so that's why, when Trump's talking about, oh, we're gonna send in the Navy to open it up. What's the Navy going to do other than provide a big fat target for the Iranians to hit?
Yeah. Following the escalations today, Larry, the United States is saying right now the rules of engagement for U.S. forces in the region being changed to strike immediate threat against ships that cross the strait, like IRGC fast boats and Iranian missile positions. And this is the new. Do you consider it as a new escalation, and we are somehow
Well,
gradually
yeah,
getting there?
yeah. I mean, this is a bit of a ruse by Trump. He declared on Friday that, the end of hostilities, we've won the war, and claiming that this is not just a pause, but that they've won the war. That was Operation Epic Fury. That's over. But now we got this Operation Project Freedom. That's new. So, just changing the name of it doesn't necessarily change what all your military forces are there to do. This think through the practicality of, unless the United States pre-coordinates the movement of ships that are stuck there in the Persian Gulf right now, it's going to be difficult for it to have to get on scene in a timely manner. So let's say they're sitting there at Al Dhafra Air Force Base, south of Dubai, and call comes in that Iran is boarding a ship, a tanker just north of the Strait of Hormuz. So you got to scramble the jets, fly out there, get the location, and then what do? If they boarded a ship, you're not going to bomb the ship, because you're doing the Iranians' work for them, if you will. In fact, Iran's not trying to destroy the ship; they're trying to just take control of it and its cargo or its crew. So this is going to be very difficult in practice for the United States to actually be effective in even taking on Iranian gunboats. I don't, unless they've got sort of a permanent drone loitering above. But my understanding is Iran now has some pretty good countermeasures to that, could shoot it down. So this is, operating just 12 miles, 12 to 30 miles off Iran's coast doesn't give the United States a very good cushion.
The other reports, Larry, show multiple U.S. Air Force refuelers they're seen above the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman refueling U.S. fighter jets to enforce the new engagement rules, as it was mentioned. What is that, Larry, and how far they can go when it comes to this? I would say if they go above these GCC countries, because it's part of the war, then again we're going to get to the back. They're going to hit the targets in these countries because they're using the airspace of GCC countries. If they go above the Persian Gulf, close to the Strait of Hormuz, they're going to get to the area that is more dangerous for these fighter jets. How is that going to work for them?
Well, I mean, that's what they got to keep in mind. Are they trying to escalate this now immediately to hot? I think what I've heard is they're going to wait probably till later this week. Uh, the smart move for Trump, in order not to affect the markets adversely, is wait until Friday afternoon, at 4:30, which would be let's see, 4:30. That's so that'd be about 1 o'clock in the morning in Tehran to start launching, new attacks. I think this is ultimately going to culminate in new airstrikes, even though even Admiral Brad Cooper reportedly in private has advised against it. I think that's where Trump's going to wind up doing that. So I think the odds are high this will go kinetic again. Now, my friend Ray McGovern was hopeful that Putin's warning to both Israel and the United States last week will have an effect in keeping them from re-engaging. But I don't think Trump and Bibi were going to listen, and so I think this has the potential really to escalate again.
There are two things, Larry. One of them is the communication that you've mentioned between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. And the other thing is that Donald Trump wants to go to China. He wants to show some sort of, power when he gets there, some sort of, he has some cards in his hand, to play with Xi Jinping. But the problem is that Xi Jinping, I don't know if you saw the latest move
Oh,
on the
yeah.
part of China, it comes to the refineries who are working with Iran. The government in China said, we're supporting you. Go
Yeah.
ahead and do your work. Sanctions are not going to influence you because we're backing you. This is the new,
Yeah.
it's important, it's bold, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, no, it was China's made it very clear. It told the United States, screw off. You're not going to tell us what to do. We're not paying attention to you. I doubt that Trump is going to make that trip to China. In fact, Xi Jinping as well. I couldn't believe this when I heard it, but they're reportedly saying that China is banning any receipt of shipments that go through the Panama Canal because the United States has booted the Chinese companies that were managing that. Now, the reason when I heard that, and again, I wanted to see if I could confirm it, but a lot of the goods that are sold out of the Cologne Free Trade Zone come from China. So the question is, how are those goods going to get into the Cologne Free Trade Zone? And a lot of those goods are sold in Central, South America, and the Caribbean. So from that standpoint, I that's why I question that report.
Yeah. Here it seems, Larry, the other tanker was attacked close to the UAE. It was reported by the government in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in United Arab Emirates. It says that the tanker belonging to Emirati company ADNOC near the Strait of Hormuz was attacked by 2 drones. And
They said it was empty.
yeah. Because in this report that I'm reading, they didn't mention that, and maybe that you know better because it wasn't mentioned in this. The other thing, Larry, you look at the surface, that tanker which was seized by the United States under the control of the United States, they're getting back to Iran. The crews are back to Iran, and the United States send that tanker to Pakistan, then go to Iran.
I don't know. I don't know if they take it to Pakistan or to Diego Garcia or wherever. Again, the whole thing about the blockade has been a bit of a myth because if you're going to stop a vessel, board it, basically seize it, then the standard operating procedure for the U.S. Navy is to put a prize crew on there, so a crew that will run that ship, and then you put a vessel, an accompanying U.S. ship to go with that vessel. All right. So how many ships have come out of the Persian Gulf since April 15th? At least 150, all from Iran. Okay, do the math. Does the United States have 150 ships deployed in the Persian Gulf or in the Arabian Sea or Gulf of Oman to interdict? No, they don't. They've only got a fraction of that. So there's no way they can do an actual blockade, what they've been talking about. What they've been doing is just, I'll call it a symbolic blockade. Exist on paper. They can stop a couple of ships, but they can't even put a dent in it. And because the United States simply does not have enough ships. And if they, you're going to use either a destroyer or a cruiser to come up alongside to stop a vessel. Well, those destroyers, they are attached to the carrier strike groups for air defense. You pull them off, then the carrier no longer has air defense. So this is, like I said, this has not been thought through very well. They haven't provided the resources to implement such a plan.
Yeah, I think the other evidence that somehow, shows that you're right is the new report about the sanctioned Iranian LPG tanker passing through the U.S. Navy blockade. And it's going from the Asaluye. Do you remember that South Pars, oil facility that was targeted during the war?
Right.
And close to that facility, there is a new tanker going there, and and just passing through the Strait of Hormuz and getting out of this Oman, and getting to the I don't know what is the destiny of this tanker, but it seems that they could pass through the blockade, which it shows. I don't know if they're doing this by deliberately, the United States, because of the market, is doing this, or they're just simply they don't know what to do, or they don't have the ability to control all of this.
They don't have the ability to control, because look, that ship, when it came out of the Iranian port, I'm sure it sailed, it was, say, 12 miles offshore. And it just, as it sailed along, it just stayed 12 miles offshore until it gets, to its Indian Ocean, or, maybe the other side of the Gulf of Oman. But I think they're headed towards the Indian Ocean. The U.S. ships are not going to come within 200 miles of the Iranian coast. If they get in like 180, 150 miles off, they are then in range of Iranian ballistic and cruise missiles and drones. So they're not going to do that. It's too risky, which is the point about all this, that the United States has they're not willing to incur the risk of losing so many ships. But it's not like we got a lot to lose in the first place.
The point that Iranian, Larry, you look at the Iranian media, the points that they're bringing up, that there is no ceasefire. They don't see any sort of ceasefire. They see that the United States, it's some sort of pause. As they mention it, it's a pause. It's not a ceasefire, because since then, we didn't have the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. We didn't have the ceasefire between Iran and the United States with the blockade. And the attack, we had some sort of attacks, American attack on Iranian ships, and Iran responding to that. What is this situation we're in, if you were to define it?
Well, we're in it's like the eye of a hurricane. Okay, the hurricane, the winds, the high winds, the heavy rain, but the eye passes over. You got a momentary peace, but it's not going to last, because you got the backside of that hurricane coming, which is worse, and that's what's getting ready to happen. Israel's struggling to figure out what it's wanting to accomplish in Lebanon, and the Zionist government is just out of control. And so if they now try to expand the war, go back to bombing Iran's going to turn around and bomb the daylights out of Israel. and it will be bad. And the Israelis will be back to living in bomb shelters like they were for 5 weeks. Israel's been very careful to cover up the amount of damage that was done during those 5 weeks, but you got to be convinced it was far worse than anything they experienced during the 12-day war. And during the 12-day war, there were significant damage done to a variety of facilities and installations, military and industrial, scientific, etc. So no, this is I think this is going to heat up again, and it's not going to. Perhaps the only thing that will stop it will be an global economic collapse, because I think that is coming. The February 28th essentially it lit the fuse on a bomb, and the fuse burns and burns and burns and burns, and then finally when it gets finishes its course, it explodes, and it comes relatively suddenly. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see. We're starting to see that with the oil market. Oil market is now tightening again, despite Trump's best efforts to claim, oh, we got peace. And, I was looking, the Brent was up now to 111, 112. So, this starts having a cascading effect because it raises the prices on everything.
Larry, do you see the possibility of having a new false flag operation? Because Israel is somehow itching to continue this war, but they don't want, in my opinion, they don't want to fight it against Iran. They want the United States to go ahead and fight Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And here is what Naftali Bennett said about the possibility of having a new 9/11 in the United States. Here is what he said.
The reality is that Israel is a democracy, is the best ally America can have.
And NATO's not helping.
Imagine for a moment we don't exist, okay? And you've got the Middle East festering with jihadists and Al-Qaeda type and ISIS and Hezbollah. We know what'll happen. They're going to hit the Twin Towers, 9/11.
You were in New York when that happened.
I was in Manhattan when it happened. I saw those buildings on fire. That's what happens when you say the Middle East isn't our problem, we don't care. So the radical Islamists will come to the big Satan, to Manhattan, to California, to America, but with nuclear ballistic missiles. And by having Israel, you do not need to send hundreds of thousands of boots on the ground, because we, Israelis, are 10 million boots on the ground, always here.
Yeah.
This aircraft carrier called Israel is not going anywhere. We're here to stay. We're not asking, and we never asked America to fight for us. We're fighting right now in the air together. We can defend ourselves. We do need America to have our back.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The level of lies that he's spreading right now.
Well, number one, he ignores the fact that Israel, along with the West, has been funding many of these radical Sunni groups. Israel bankrolled Hamas to the tune of $1 billion at least. Number one, the radical Islamic Sunni terrorism that's been directed against the West had as its foundations the fact that the United States had its troops in Saudi Arabia and was invading other countries in Saudi and throughout the Middle East. So it was a reaction to our actions, what we did from initiating. The real other lie in this is that it's been Iran that's been spreading terrorism. Absolutely not true. I mean, it's just that fundamentally not true. The numbers don't back it up. All you have to do is simply look at the State Department annual report. The latest one should be out by now, country report on terrorism for 2025. This is, what Bennett sort of hints at, though, is without the United States, Israel cannot continue its genocide and its genocidal tactics against other peoples in the region. And the good news is we're starting to see a real turn in American political sentiment towards Israel. Israel is no longer viewed as a sympathetic little country. It's viewed like a nasty disease, and America needs to get rid of it.
You know, the funny thing that he's saying that the Israel doesn't need the United States to back them, but so far with the war with Iran, who was fighting this, Larry? Israel was doing nothing. Basically, they were involved in the southern part of Lebanon, defending themselves because they're incapable of, But it seems as though that they're somehow feeling that the war was fought by Israelis. It's just unbelievable how he's ignoring the fact of what has happened just in the last 40 days.
Yeah. No, I know it's the Donald Trump was talked into this by Bibi Netanyahu and the head of Mossad. He ignored Trump ignored the advice he got from CIA and from his own military, as well as J.D. Vance. So, yeah, the sooner the United States separates itself from Israel, the better, in my view. I don't know if we'll get there soon, but here's hoping.
Yeah. Laurie, you've mentioned that the war may happen, in 5 or 6 days, next weekend, you mentioned. And how is that going to change the position of the United States in the Persian Gulf? And how is that going to help, for example, a country like UAE, which they have decided to get out of OPEC, the other company, the other coalition, which is considering the part of oil exports. I don't remember. I'll try to find it out. It's something like OPEC or something like that, and they're getting out of GCC countries.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to help the United States position and the position of UAE in the Persian Gulf?
No. In fact, I view the UAE as having committed a form of political and national suicide by adopting this stance. There have been tensions between Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis, and I really don't know what fully provoked that, but there is a tendency in the West to look at these Gulf states as if they are real, that they reflect a real political foundation, that they're that sort of they have some inherent organic reason to exist. And the reality is they're artificial creations, that these are all, these tribes that you divided up control over that peninsula have, now recreated themselves as nations like the United Arab Emirates. The Emiratis have a problem. They're not necessarily agreed within themselves what's up, but the current leaders have decided to align themselves with Israel and the United States. Boy, that's a bad bet. When this thing goes kinetic again, and that means the United States starts to renew its bombings of Iran, and then Iran in turn retaliates with its ballistic missile and drone attacks. The Al Dhafra Air Base, I think, will be destroyed. It's still intact. I think it will be destroyed. I think there will be more physical damage inflicted upon Dubai. It doesn't. So right now it's dropping out of OPEC. Big deal. It's not shipping any oil anyway to speak of. So that's a non-entity. The goal previously of OPEC was to try to control the supply so you'd have a reliable price. And this is I think one of Scott Bessent's pet projects, trying to help break up OPEC. But I think it's going to backfire significantly. And when this war goes kinetic again, it's going to weaken the United Arab Emirates to a point that it may actually cease to exist as a country. because they have no income coming. They don't have any money. They are out of money. Then they're having to rely upon the United States, basically loans from the U.S. To stay afloat. They're hoping that they get a quick end to the war, they can get back to pumping oil. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think this is going to drag on for 2 or 3 more months at least.
Yeah. The other organization that they have left, the institution, it's OAPEC. It's called the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries. They have left this organization as well because they want to be free after all, it seems. And Larry, the other point that was mentioned yesterday or the day before, they were talking about this, kamikaze dolphins, being used by Iranians to attack ships.
Yeah.
What is that? Because we've heard that from U.S. Navy. They have been running an actual military dolphin program for 60 years. They were talking.
That was taken out of a game. It's like, remember the Ghost of Kiev, that fighter pilot that was shooting down all the Russian aircraft? That was an entity, a character out of a video game. I think that's exactly what exploding dolphins. Man, PETA would go crazy if they find the U.S. military blowing up the dolphins.
I don't know how they do that. It doesn't make any sort of sense when it comes to the operation level.
Are you're? I doubt if you don't have memory of this, but in the 70s, there was a very popular television show called Flipper. And Flipper was about this dolphin. I mean, it was all, the whole generation, my generation grew up with singing the song, Flipper, Flipper, lighter than air, this whole thing. So yeah, the exploding dolphins, not going to happen. They've got, the Iranians have, they've got exploding drones, sort of like dolphins, except you don't have to feed them, or you don't have to worry about them dying on you. Oh, they could break down, but when they blow up, they'll have the same effect.
Scott Besson says that he's predicting the oil prices will fall within 3 to 9 months. It seems that what does that mean, Larry? Here is what he said.
More oil on the market is simple supply and demand. You're thinking that this is going to help the case on oil prices. You've got the UAE no longer needing to follow quotas from OPEC. They'll put more oil on the market, and that adds to the oil on the market to send prices. You think oil prices will be lower before the midterm elections?
I think oil prices, we can see in the futures market that oil prices are already lower 3 months, 6 months, 9 months out. But again, Maria, there are hundreds of oil tankers waiting in the Gulf to come out. The U.S. is only blockading Iranian ships, and we will see. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see more of those ships coming out. The Iranians, it reminds me that they're kind of like the Keystone Cops here. It reminds me of Baghdad Bob back during the Iraqi war. You had the guy kind of spouting nonsense while the tanks were driving around behind him, and the Iranians are like this. They're not tolling the strait. We think that they've gotten less than 1.3 million in tolls, which is a pittance on their previous daily oil revenues. And their oil infrastructure is starting to creak. It hasn't been maintained, again, because of our decades-long sanctions against them. They are rapidly filling up storage. And as that happens, they're going to have to start shutting in wells, which we think could be in the next week.
Yeah.
God, he's a buffoon. I mean, he really, he is, he's establishing a reputation for when he says something, take the exact opposite position, because whatever he says is wrong. Oh yeah, the futures market, the paper market, the true price is already coming down. Yeah, go back and look what the futures market was saying on February 28th about the price of oil in June. Oh, that's $85. Really? What's the price now? $140. This paper market is bullshit. It's complete manipulation. And it's manipulated by people like Besant. But look, the average consumer, they know what they're feeling. They know the pain. And I know here in my own town in Florida, the price of oil, basically the gasoline at the station has gone up 50 cents a gallon in the last 6 days. 50 cents a gallon. And it's I'm sure it's higher today than it was. In fact, I went on Saturday to filled up, paid $3.96. And then I drove past the gas station yesterday, and the guy was literally out there on his knees changing the price 2 cents. It went up to $3.98, but that was just in 24 hours. So, the trend line's going up, and it's only going to get worse. But Besant he's convinced Trump that all we got to do is keep putting this economic pressure on Iran. They're going to collapse. They're not going to collapse, but that's what he's telling them, and Trump is believing it. And then once it turns out that they'll find out in another couple of weeks that it's not true, then what? They're going to have to negotiate a deal with Iran that meets Iran's terms. It's that simple.
Yeah, New York Post reported that doomsday for California as last barrel of oil from the Middle East arrives in Long Beach. And it seems the situation is worse in California because of they have some sort of different taxation system. That's why they're getting more, this sort of increase in the oil or
Right.
in petroleum, in the gas.
Yeah. I mean, they get a lot of state revenue comes from the gas tax, and now all of a sudden, people are paying $8 a gallon. I'm not sure what the price is, but I think it's something like that when you factor in all the taxes. California, for the very wealthy, it's a bother. It's a nuisance. Where it hits is the middle class. The folks who, especially those who live paycheck to paycheck, that they don't have, cash reserves of, they're not sitting on $10,000 or $50,000 in the bank. They wait till the paycheck comes in, and then they pay it out immediately. And this is only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And then, Trump and Besant will be running around. I think ultimately what's going to happen is Besant's going to get blamed. Trump will fire Besant.
Yeah.
And, there'll be a whole raft of firings. Besant, Kash Patel, Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
It'll be ugly.
I don't know. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard going to be part of?
Well, why fire her? She's irrelevant. Yeah. I mean, she's a non-entity. She gets a paycheck. They write up reports that are ignored.
Yeah.
And she keeps her mouth shut and stays out of the limelight. So, she's a real nowhere woman, to paraphrase the Beatles song, he's a real nowhere man living in a nowhere land. That's her. She's a nowhere woman.
Larry, Iran has updated the new plan. Is 14-point plan. Is basically those points in 10-point plan are considered in this new proposal, but they have preconditions being added to this new proposal. And looking at the new proposal, how did you find it? And
well, they've toughened their position. Instead of being more conciliatory, see, the entire premise of the economic blockade and to put this kind of pressure on Iran is that under that kind of pressure, Iran's going to go, oh, this is too painful. We can't continue doing this. We got to change course and become more conciliatory. They're not becoming more conciliatory. I think they're becoming more confident. Screw the Americans. Oh, you want us to talk about nuclear enrichment? That's off the table. You don't get to talk about that until we have a peace deal in place. All right. So that's why I say they've taken a much harder line, and they're showing no inclination to make any kind of concession, which candidly, I don't blame them. I think they're in a strong position right now to outlast the United States. They can begin cutting bilateral deals. If Japan's got ships that are stuck in the Persian Gulf, let's first. What they'll do is first work out deals with Saudi Arabia and Qatar. I think that'll be their first step. They already got Qatar essentially, so now they get Saudis. Once they have Saudis, then all of a sudden they say, okay, we'll facilitate the movement of products out of your countries through the Strait of Hormuz. But they won't extend that same courtesy to the United Arab Emirates, which will make them crazy. But that's how, in this case, Iran's going to solidify its position politically as a genuine regional power that the others can't afford to ignore.
I think you brought a very valid and important point, Larry, that Iran is today more confident than it was before this war started.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that happening with the case of Russia. They didn't want that war. Iran didn't want this war. And the United States is forcing them into a position that they're feeling more confident with their position, with their ability to fire back, to fight back against the United States.
Yeah.
This is the achievement of, I would say, the two administrations, the Biden administration and the Trump administration, put these two countries in a better position right now than they were before in terms of, how do they feel about themselves. And they literally right now looking at the Iranian media, Iranian government, the way they're talking, they really feel much, much more confident than they were before this war started.
Yeah. I call that I've told the elephant keeping, how do you keep an elephant tied up to a rope? And so when the baby elephant first comes into your control as a zookeeper, you put a heavy chain around their ankle and they can't break loose. So they come to associate anything around their ankle as that heavy chain. And as they grow up, then you replace it with just a rope. But in their mind, they believe, oh, I got something around my leg. I can't get free until they discover, hey, I can get free. Then all of a sudden that realization, I'm no longer dependent. And I think there was an element that both in Russia prior to the start of the special military operation and in Iran, always lingering in the back of the mind was this notion that, well, we can't function or live without this economic system that the U.S. is in control of. So we got to be careful and cautious because they can really screw us up. We don't have any, they didn't believe they had any alternatives. And then once the sanctions get imposed, and then they start acting they act actually with more freedom. And then they find out, oh, we got a lot more options. And that's where I don't think that that maybe there was some analyst somewhere in the Iranian security services that had done a full analysis and said, man, we can take control of the world economy by controlling the Strait of Hormuz. I don't believe that happened. They said let's blockade it. And then they started looking at, oh man, look at what we're causing. That is much bigger than they thought. And now they realize, hey, we've got some serious monopoly control here. And best of all, it falls outside of international law because it's our territorial waters. 12 miles out, that's their territory, and 12 miles from Oman, so you get a little bit of overlap between Omani, there's a neutral territory out there that's both Omani and Iranian claimed. But this now, Iran has awakened that other countries have to take us seriously. They have to listen to us, and our demands are going to be met.
Yeah. You know, today Iranian foreign minister said that we are currently not negotiating about the nuclear program.
Right. Yeah, they
So-
took that off the table. Well, why not? They say, look, we're the ones that have abided by international law. We signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We allowed for inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. You don't require Israel to do any of that, but we did it of our own volition, and we'll continue to do it of our own volition. And, you want to talk to us about enrichment? Get all these other things. Let's get rid of sanctions. We need that. We'll unfreeze our assets. Let's do that. Bring an end to this attack on the Palestinians. That's got to stop. And what we're seeing again today is they are Israel is attacking with settlers Palestinians that are in East Jerusalem. So Palestinians who've lived there all their lives are having their homes confiscated. That's just it's stuff like that makes you just despise the Israelis. I mean, they're a bunch of criminal thugs. They're not. They don't really deserve to be a country by their conduct.
Larry, do you think that the United States would build a new base in Israel to defend Israel, considering what has happened in GCC countries? And Israel is asking for that.
I don't think so. Trump may want to do it, but he's not going to have. I don't think he's going to have the support. The Israel's grasp of control over the U.S. Congress is starting to slip, and with increasingly in the elections that are upcoming, you got more and more people like the Democrat senator candidate Platner, I think is his name. He's refused to take any AIPAC money at all. So they're stepping up, saying no, we're not going to be beholden to a foreign government.
Yeah. Larry, here is what Tucker Carlson. I don't know if you saw the interview Tucker Carlson had with New York Times.
Yeah, I watched the whole thing.
He mentioned something so, in my opinion, important about Donald Trump and the atmosphere around him and how he managed that. Here is what he said.
Of cowardly people, as there always are, and Trump engenders cowardice in the people around him through intimidation. And there is a kind of quality that he has that's spellbinding, and I think it probably literally is a spell. And the effect is to weaken people around him and make them more compliant and more confused. And I've experienced this myself. You spend a day with Trump and sort of like you're in this kind of dreamland. It's like smoking hash or something. It's interesting, very interesting. And there may be a supernatural component to it. I'm not a theologian, but it's real. And anyone who's been around him can tell you it's real.
I think he's pointing out something so important when it comes to the personality of Donald Trump, which is put all these chaos that he has made and his administration has made so far. It's put all the blame on him, not on other people around him.
Yeah, well, again, I don't. Tucker didn't go down the road of talking about what's happened to Trump mentally, but you don't have to be a physician to look at Trump's actions over the last 3 months. They are very erratic, and the thing that is, Trump in the past, he would insult people, but he would usually insult or attack people that had, attacked him. Whereas what he's done of late, where he went after Candace Owens and Alex Jones and Tucker and Megyn Kelly and the Pope and Riley Gaines, and you go down the list. It's hateful, and it is it's driven so much more by emotions that he doesn't have in check or under control. And so he has surrounded himself with people who will, you know, who will basically go along, with what he wants to do. And we saw now, I don't know if that New York Times report that was on the decision how he went to war in Iraq or in Iran was designed to provide cover for everybody who said, "Oh yeah, we told him not to do it," or to prepare people for a transition that's going to come. But within that, the only one in his cabinet, the national security advisors, that spoke up and said, "Yeah, we need to go do this attack," was Pete Hegseth. Everybody else is like saying, "Nah, wait a minute, boss, that's not such a good idea. That's pretty risky." So that tees up Hegseth to be a scapegoat if things go wrong. And Trump keeps looking for an easy victory, and as long as somebody is out there telling him, "Oh yeah, we got this, you can have this victory," he's going to buy it. But I think the events, if he kicks this off again and renews the attacks on Iran, the United States is going to suffer far more serious losses than it did during the first 5 weeks of the war.
The other point during this interview, which was mentioned by the reporter, who she was asking Tucker Carlson about the Zionism, what's going on between, with the case of Gaza, with the case of Israel, she brought something interesting, that the Holocaust in Europe started with dehumanizing the people, the Jewish people. Then they started killing the people. And the same way you look at Israel, you remember the defense minister of Israel, the guy who is right now, who is not part of the government. And he said, these are human animals. It's not just him. It's about all of these, most of these people. The dehumanization again happening.
Right. Well, in fact, this New York Times interviewer was trying to make the case that Tucker was anti-Semitic because he gave a platform to people like Nick Fuentes. And so therefore you're allowing him to express these views on Israel, which makes you a supporter and enabler of anti-Semitism. And, Tucker pushed back on that appropriately. So just noting, he said, well, I agree with your basic point that when people start trying to dehumanize or to dismiss other groups, other individuals as being lower than, not human, not worthy of respect. He goes, when Nick Fuentes was on my show and said these anti-Semitic things, I pushed back on that. So he says, I didn't endorse it. But he says, now Israel's doing that very thing with Amalek, referring to all Palestinians as subhuman. And we saw that, the list of crimes against Israel in terms of how they behave towards Christians is growing. Last week, this one settler rushes up behind a French nun, shoves her down to the ground. She hits her head, hurts her severely. The burning of churches, destruction of churches, destruction of religious icons that are Christian. Israel's doing it all. They're on an anti-Christian crusade. And now when people will push back against it, they'll be hollering victim. Oh, I'm a victim again. They're attacking me because I'm a Jew. All that nonsense. When they're the ones actually feeding it and promoting this stuff, which I think was evident. This New York Times reporter, here she is, Jewish, making this case that Tucker is responsible for inciting anti-Semitism.
And he brought something up about Ted Cruz, how Ted Cruz is responsible for. How can you not recognize the situation with Ted Cruz and how the damage he's causing and how?
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Again, his Tucker certainly has strong feelings about Ted Cruz, and Cruz dearly. He would, I sure love to be president if he could, but I guess I don't know if he's eligible. I can't remember.
Canadian. He's Canadian.
Well, he's Canadian. He's a natural, so he's not a natural born citizen. Yeah, so I don't think he could. He ran for president, but I don't think he could be constitutionally be allowed to take office.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this week. By the time you and Colonel Wilkerson and I are together on Friday, we may be back in the thick of things.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right. Now wear that shirt the rest of the day. Don't just take it off. Wear it the rest of the day.
Got it.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. See you soon. Bye-bye.
हेलो चेक हेलो हेलो चेक हेलो hello, 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 got reply, hello, hello, check, hello, 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 check,
अरे क्यों चढ़े सारा यार इतने दे यार उतर जाओ सारा स्टेज पे सारा थले उतरो यात्रा.com से बनावांगा फिर चाहिए
हम इसके ऊपर बैठेगा तार मिसिंग करे ना हल्ला लगो बैठ दे तब एक बार ओए पीछे जाओ ओए बच्चा बाहर आ जाओ बाहर जाओ चलो 10 बार बाहर जाओ 2 मिनट में कहने बाहर नहीं चलो नशा बार पीछे आ जाओ बैठो चलो उतर जाओ तार मिसिंग करे मेरा लगती बार बार इसमें तार मिसिंग का हाथ थोड़ी हरकत देखनी हुई पिछले कोई नहीं एनु मोल्डिंग में करूं मेरा हाथ है ना मोल्डिंग
थोड़ा दी थोड़ा ना किसको बेस थोड़ा